Now, depending on when you're watching this, it either will be, it is, or it was MiniDisc Day, the first International MiniDisc Day on the 6th of March 2020. A little bit like Cassette Store Day or Record Store Day. I mean, don't worry about it if you're one of these people that's anti-physical media. It's just a promotional thing, a little bit of fun for people to collect some new discs. There's, I think, 54 titles coming out from various kind of small and independent artists. You won't see any massive names on this, just a bit of something for the people who still remember MiniDisc, or people who may be getting into it now. Now, I put out a video a couple of years ago about MiniDisc, and it's already got over 1 million views on that now. So I'm going to hold myself completely personally responsible for this resurgence in MiniDisc. That's a joke. I think the interest is always there. It's just, that's why I made a video about it, and that's why there's a MiniDisc Day. It's not something that appealed to everyone in every country, but the people who did use MiniDisc do still hold fondness for the format. Now, the titles that are coming out on MiniDisc Day, they're going to be like these ones. I've showed you some of these before, where it's been a MiniDisc printed on standard blank MiniDisc, like the kind that you could buy yourself, and it's just recorded on a normal MiniDisc, they're not pressed. But the difference with these is they come with a nice little box. Got lovely printing on here that you'd have difficulty replicating at home, and of course these MiniDiscs have titles on them. When you put them in your machine, the titles show on the display. Now, that was something that was always a feature of MiniDiscs right from the beginning. It was something that was added into CDs later on, but it started in MiniDisc right from the word go. And adding those titles into your MiniDisc, well, it was something that was never really much of an issue to me. Back in the day when I was, maybe the early 2000s, that's when I was mostly using MiniDisc. And what I'd do is I'd buy a CD, or I'd obtain some MP3s, I'd put those into the Sony software. If it was a CD, it would get the track titles from the Grace Note database, put it onto a MiniDisc, and then the MiniDisc would have the titles on there. Now, not many people nowadays are going to be linking their MiniDisc players up to PC software that really pretty much ran its best on XP or Windows 98 or something. I think you can fiddle around and get it to work maybe with some modern operating systems if you spend a lot of time over it, but most people will just be, if they just get into MiniDisc now just for a bit of fun, think they'll just get a portable or perhaps a home deck or whatever, and they won't think of linking them up to a computer. So in this video, to cash in on MiniDisc Day as much as anything else, and for the fact that the project I was going to put out this week failed on me, so I thought I'd do something about adding titles onto your own MiniDiscs without using a computer, and the various different options that are available and how well or otherwise they work. So let's get on with it. MiniDisc was launched in 1992 with the MZ1, which was a portable machine, but since it was also the only machine you could buy at the time, it had to do everything, and that included giving you a keyboard for entering the track names. But by the time the MZR3 had launched in 1995, the keyboard had gone. Instead, you entered the track titles with a wheel, one character at a time. It was slightly slower, but it still worked really well. However, a few years later and the wheels had come off, literally, and by the time a machine like this came out in 2002, you had to enter track names via an awkward combination of key presses and a wobbly, inaccurate rocker switch, with one false move on that throwing you right back to the beginning. But it's clear by this point that Sony weren't expecting you to be titling up a whole MiniDisc on the device itself. It was more about linking up to a PC and importing those titles. But this video isn't going to be about portables, because with those there really isn't too much you can do to improve that manual track titling experience. It's either like it or lump it. Instead though, I'm going to focus on home hi-fi components and show how with the right equipment or accessories, titling can go from being a chore to a pleasure, and all without a PC in sight. But first I'll need to record a MiniDisc to add the track names to. So I've picked a random CD off the shelf, one I haven't listened to for quite some years. I'm going to copy this one across to a blank MiniDisc. It's going to copy in real time over an optical digital connection. And once it's finished copying, I'm going to go onto the MiniDisc machine itself and see how easy it is to add those track names in using the controls on the front. Now, this is something I've never tried to do before with this particular machine, and it turns out it's definitely not the most intuitive system. I've no doubt I'd get quicker with practice, but it is slow and cumbersome, and while it does work, I really wouldn't want to try and fill in the track names for a full album this way, especially if they've got loads of apostrophes or featuring someone in brackets and all that kind of stuff. So the next method to try is the remote control. I expected this would be a lot easier and quicker. But again, the buttons on here are really quite small, fiddly, and the whole system is unintuitive. It took multiple takes to get this particular sequence on camera because I kept accidentally pressing the wrong button, which would throw me out of the menu. Again, I might get better in time with this, but I can tell it would never become anything less than an unpleasant chore. So let's swap machines. Now, I bought this machine sometime last year. I thought I'd treat myself to a really decent home MiniDisc deck, but I've never tried entering a title on it. However, starting off by using the buttons on the front, it's immediately a lot more intuitive than the Onkyo. It does take a while, though, to switch between cases using this particular method, because to get to lowercase characters, you have to spin the wheel through all the uppercase letters first. The order goes uppercase, then lowercase, then numbers, then symbols, and loops back round. But you can find yourself quite a long way away from the character that you want to enter next. Things are a lot more direct with the remote, though, as there's a separate button which cycles between the 4 character sets. It's a similar system to the one on the Onkyo, but the display on the Sony gives much better prompts. It's not as easy to make a mistake. Overall, I found the remote on the Sony the quickest way to add titles so far, but I wouldn't call it quick, and I wouldn't relish titling up a double album this way. However, this machine has another option available. On the front panel, there's a PS2 keyboard socket that takes a standard PC keyboard. Once you've got a keyboard attached, you also get full control over all the other functions of the recorder, as well as the ability to enter those track names. Naming the tracks is an absolute doddle. Just use the function keys to select the track you're interested in, press return, that takes you straight into the text edit function, and then just type the name in as normal, press return to enter it, and that's it. The only slightly odd thing about the way it works is it always reverts back to capitals only mode at the start, so you just have to take the caps lock off before you start typing. But I was happy to see the backspace deletes the previous character, just as you'd expect. It's far more sensible than using the remote or the controls on the front of the device, where if you want to delete the previous character, you have to first move the cursor over it and then press clear. So by using this keyboard, I was able to get the remaining tracks labelled up in a minute or so, and with that, this particular MiniDisc was done. One of the reasons I bought this machine is because I saw that keyboard socket on the front, and it was a feature I wanted to try for myself, and now that I have, I'm a big fan. Entering text this way using a proper keyboard is so quick and easy. If you've got a machine with the appropriate socket, you'd have to be mad not to use it. But now I need to record another MiniDisc to add track titles to, so I pulled out Rex and Effect's first eponymous CD. I hadn't heard this one in years, so it was great to listen to it again while it was copying across. But while that's going on, let's pop in the other room and take a look at the next track titling tool. Last year I was lucky enough to find a new old stock Sony RM-D11P remote. Now there aren't too many of these around. I believe the Japanese version, the D10P, works the same but has optional Japanese characters on each key, and there's also a later version, the D20P. But let's just look at this thing. I mean, this is a beautiful little piece of 1996. As well as the QWERTY keyboard on here, we've got rubberized keys that give you control over all the other functions of any compatible MiniDisc recorders. And it's also got a nice lid on the top that prevents everything getting dusty. That's held closed with a magnet in one corner. Okay, so let's pop some new batteries in it and just see if it's working. And you can see, yes, we've got power. And rather than a shift key, with this one you switch between cases. So that's what these two buttons are for. And the blanked out circle to the right of those is where the Japanese version would have had a button to select a different character set. So conveniently, in the other room, I can hear the CD has just about finished copying across to the MiniDisc. So let's try adding the track titles onto that disc using this QWERTY remote. Now, jumping between cases rather than using a shift key does take a little bit of getting used to, but once I'd got the hang of it, it turned out to be a very quick and easy to use keyboard, despite the rubberized keys. Not as quick as the PS2 keyboard, but still pretty good. So all in, it took perhaps a couple of minutes to label all the tracks off the CD, and there really is something incredibly pleasing about a MiniDisc with all the track names listed on it. And of course it does help you to quickly find the track that you want to play, for example, Peanut Butter. Now let's just talk about a way to get those track titles automatically populated. First, you need to start with a CD that includes CD text. The earliest commercial releases with CD text on them were back in 1997, but it was slow to be adopted. It's only recently where you stand a relatively good chance of buying a new CD with track titles on it, but still it's lucky dip. But let's just say you've got one of those. How do you go about getting those copied across to a mini disc? Well, assuming those track titles aren't copy protected, yeah, that can happen, but assuming they aren't, you'd think that they might get copied across over the digital connection between the two devices, either coax or optical, but they don't. You need to have a separate connection between your CD player and the MiniDisc recorder to carry the text. Now, on compatible Sony equipment, they might use a Control A12 cable. It's the same cable that they use to activate the sync recording feature. Alternatively, some Sony MiniDisc Walkman and CD Walkman models could be connected together with a Sony RK-TXT1 cable that joined up the two inline remote control sockets and transfer the text across that way. Then again, you might have a Sony HiFi that's got a built-in mini disc and a CD player, and some of those will copy the text across internally when you do a dub. But finally, you could use a suitable CD and mini disc combo unit, which is what I'm going to do. Now for this one, I've picked this hybrid SA CD to copy across because it's just 39 minutes in length, so it won't take me too long to do. Now, being a hybrid SA CD, it's got a CD layer, which is the part that I'm copying, and while there's no CD text logo on the box, I know it has text on there. Most Sony CDs manufactured after 1997 should do, but SA CDs were launched in 1999, so pretty much all do. Okay, so I've got a CD with text included on it for the track names. Also, the track names aren't copy protected, and I've got a machine that can read the CD text as well as copy it to a mini disc internally alongside the audio. And this machine will also do all that at 4 times speed. Now, it's not always able to run at 4 times with all discs. If it encounters a problem, it'll just drop back to single speed copying. However, on this occasion, it's copying fine at the faster speed, and in just under 10 minutes, the whole album has been copied across. Now, I'll just take out the CDs so that we can use the display just for the mini disc, and you can see that as I go through here, all the track titles have been copied across. The only thing that's missing, though, is the disc title. For some unknown reason, well, unknown to me, the disc title never seems to get copied across on this particular machine. I've looked through all the settings, I just can't figure out why not, but it's not a problem. I can just quickly type in the disc title using my keyboard remote. Now, just a word of warning, not all CD and minidisc combo units can copy the text across from a suitable CD. Take this little beauty, for example. Now, this is a lovely little desktop combo unit. It's capable of 4 times speed CD copying to minidisc, so it gets a nice quick copy of a CD, but unfortunately the CD part of it isn't CD text compatible, so it can't read the text on a CD and therefore it can't copy it across, which is a bit of a shame, as the minidisc section is of course capable of displaying track names if they're actually present on the minidisc. Another quick mention of something to look out for, though, is on the back of my HiFi combo unit, there's a PS2 style socket. And whilst you can physically plug a keyboard into it, it doesn't do anything. Well, at least it didn't for me, which is strange, as the English language manual for this particular model does mention controlling it with a keyboard. But then again, my machine is a Japanese import. Perhaps it's a slightly different spec. The socket on mine is definitely labelled up as a PC link connector. And that is there to connect up to a box like this, which then in turn connected up to a Windows computer running the appropriate software of the time. I hope to demonstrate that software in a future video, but I'd say if you are thinking of buying a second-hand mini-disc recorder and you see that it's got one of those PS2 sockets on, just make sure that it says keyboard next to it if you are planning on plugging a keyboard into it. But back to the matter in hand, we've been adding track titles without the aid of a PC. We've gone from the laborious text entry of the on-device controls, which definitely wasn't big fun, to the slightly better remote, well, better as far as the Sony one was concerned anyway, and then onto the optional QWERTY remote, which worked like a charm. One thing I'll say about that remote, though, is that they are rare and expensive. I'm not just talking about the Techmoan effect making them rare. They were rare before. I really paid up for mine. So unless you really hit it lucky, perhaps by getting one that's bundled with an old machine, the simplest, quickest and cheapest way to add titles onto a home-recorded mini-disc is to use a PC keyboard, provided your machine has the appropriate socket. And if you're looking for a HiFi mini-disc recorder today and you plan on recording your own discs at home, I'd say look out for that keyboard socket, because that's definitely a feature that's worth having. So hopefully some of this has been useful to anyone thinking about playing around with MiniDisc today, but that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.